I'm a designer, I'm an information designer. I'm interested mostly in user interfaces and all sorts of stuff that has to do with transit. And I have designed and took part in designing a lot of maps, and I directed a lot of other designers' work on maps, and here are some of them. And also I teach design. These are some of my lectures on wayfinding, and here are some photos from the classes. And I do all sorts of stuff around information design, like I've redesigned the road signs. 5 years ago in Paris, I was talking about how a transit map is a very important piece of graphic design in a city, and I was trying to make a case for why you should make it beautiful, not only functional, but beautiful, and how it makes it more functional as a byproduct of it being beautiful. And also I was talking about my book, Designing Transit Maps. So today I want to do two things. I want to give you an update on the book, how it's doing, and talk about maps. I will show you several maps that I was working on in the recent years and highlight some of details that I find interesting. So for those of you who don't know, I have written a book, Designing Transit Maps, and I believe it's the most comprehensive, the deepest book on transit map design on Earth. So that's my opinion. And this is the table of contents. So it covers everything from the history of maps and transit maps in particular to principles of map design like geography versus geometry, the scope, the orientation, the color coding. There is a whole part that is focused on how you design a poster with a map, how you lay out things so that it looks beautiful as a poster. The longest part of the book consists of chapters on very specific details, how to design lines, stations, interchanges. It has chapters on like how you would design a park or how you would put a street name on the street or whatever. And in that chapter about labels and text, there is a whole sub-chapter on what eye tracking tells us about how to position labels. And finally, the fifth part has to do with how a map is not just a single picture, but a whole system, because it has to adapt to different mediums, from the station wall to a smartphone, to different audiences, and to differently abled people, like this audio map of Victoria Line. So it's a digital book. This is a piece of table of contents. It shows about 90-something pages out of 702. It's quite a large book with a lot of images and a lot of text. The Russian version has been long complete, and I'm working on the English version, and it has 372 pages out of, as I said, 702 already published. And since it's a digital book, you can subscribe and start reading it. You can scan this code to go directly to the page of the book. And what's great about having a digital book, in addition to it being very interactive and have nice features like search that I was demoing in Paris, you can update it. So the 300-something pages are already available, and I believe already the pages that are released are like the best book on this topic you can get, but you will get about the same amount of information as I published it. And I have a plan to finish it by the end of this year. I hope it works. And now I want to go through several maps that I either designed myself or was directing the design of, and some other designers did the work, and show you something that I like about them. So I will start with my home city of Chelyabinsk. It's here. It's about a 2-hour flight from Moscow, which is here. And this is our official tram map, which was designed over the years by many people, which I have listed there. And it's all over the city now. It's in every tram, it's on every new tram stop. Here's a closer look. There are landmarks, there are street names, there are the largest parks, and there is the river. It's a geometrical map, but it has some geographical details underneath. And there's this place encircled in red. There's nothing special about this place, but here's a photo from there, just for you to understand where I live. There's a tram, there's a lot of snow, and this was taken, I think, also maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. What I want to focus on here is first the gapless bundles of lines. So usually when you have several lines running on the same street, sharing the same stops, you would put gaps between them to improve legibility. But I don't like that because it also makes the map noisier, less elegant. And what I strive for in my designs is to remove the gaps without sacrificing legibility. And it's not always possible to do, but here we managed to do it because, first of all, we adjusted the colors and we also arranged the lines in those bundles so that every line is in enough contrast to the neighboring line. So every line sort of works as this separator between the lines around it. And you can still follow every single line with your eye without any problem. The second thing, okay, you cannot see this at all here. Is there anything we can do to make it a little bit darker? Or should I ask Photoshop to do it? Okay, well, I'll take some time, but this is just something I have to do for this to make any sense. Don't count this time against my timeline, because no. Okay, so let me see if, yeah, you can see my Photoshop, and now I can make it darker. Yay! Now you can see what's going on there. So, yeah, what I want to do is to talk about this area over here, which is great. So this is Chelyabinsk metallurgic plant. It's a very, very large enterprise. And it has 4 tram stops in the territory of the plant, and it's only for the workers of the plant. So you cannot just ride this tram and enter the territory. On this stop, somebody will check you for a permit to make sure you actually work on this plant. And we made this area gray. So you can see that the lines themselves are even a bit more pale under this thing, and it sort of rises up on the final stop from this smog. And that's intentional because it's a really dirty enterprise and it's industrial area, so it looks like it's dirty and smoggy. Oh, also you can notice the airport and that buses 1, 41 and 45 go to the airport. We show these buses on the tram map just because they are important. You will see them later in another slide here. So Chelyabinsk is currently undergoing a large transportation reform. The routes are being rethought, the payment methods are being updated, the infrastructure is being updated, some bridges are being rebuilt, and also the transport itself is refreshed. The new buses and trolley buses and trams are being bought, so it's a large, large reform. And as a part of this reform, we also try to improve how we communicate what's happening with the transit to the people, and in particular, how we communicate the changes that are happening with the system. So we design a lot of posters with all kinds of information, and some of them include maps, as you see at the poster on the left. And there are many of them that we have to do, and we just cannot afford spending a month or whatever it takes to design a decent map. We have to do it quickly, and we use Figma for all these posters. This is just one of those documents with those posters. We have templates for everything. We have styles. We use auto layout. We use components. Everything that Figma gives you to automate your design, we use for these posters. We don't care about printing colors. It's all in RGB. We just export PDF and we print it, and it's good. And this is an example. This map is also designed in Figma, which is even more strange, because Figma, if some of you know Figma, its vector tools are really, really limited. They are very basic. It also works like a plus because it limits our imagination. We don't spend too much time in perfecting every single detail. We just use it as a language. As if you had a font that has a particular shape of letters, you just use it and it's a given. So here we have the same relationships with Figma. And it lets us build maps very quickly as we need them, because we have styles for everything, for final stops, for districts, for streets, which are important, for whatever we need to put here. And so we can quickly make maps like this one for changes of routes in a particular district, or this one for the airport. Again, you can see the buses 1, 41, and 45 that you saw a couple of slides before, but this time they are on the geographical backing of the city. We have these buses, we have detailed timetables for those buses. And it's also 16 by 9 because it's also being displayed on some panels in the airport itself. And we also generate these timetables automatically, so we built a tool that takes data from JSON and uses our templates from Figma to generate this automatically. And this one is the one I wanted to show you the most, because no designer was involved in designing of this map. It was made by Evgeny Talipov, who is a transit expert. He works in the transit authority. He is expert in planning of routes and all that stuff. And he just needed this map for a routine social media posting about some changes. And over the recent months, he learned Figma enough to be able to do that. I was not overseeing this. No other designer touched it, but I was following their social media, and I saw this map, and I had, well, if you're a designer, of course you will see a lot of things you would do differently. But as something that is just made automatically, this is very good. I'm very happy about it. And this is just another photo from snowy Chelyabinsk. The trolleybus operator is hiring drivers, so we designed it. They asked me to design a poster about hiring drivers, and I came up with this. Now let's move to Derbent, which is another city in Russia in a region called Dagestan. It's a much smaller city, and they also have a transit reform, which is also smaller, but still. And they asked us to design a bus map, and it reflects the first step of their reform. So this is what it looks like. This is the center of the city. They have 12 bus routes, and as you can see, they are insane. So they weave like crazy. They take different streets when they run in opposite directions. Sometimes they would miss a stop for no reason. One route would miss a stop where the others do stop, or it would only miss it in one direction but not in the other direction for no good reason. And that's the truth. So we had to display it somehow. Oh, okay, I forgot to tell you about my favorite route, route number 5. So it's the craziest of all. You see, we have this inside a smaller map of route number 5 to explain what's going on with it. So as it enters the city center, it first goes up, then left, then all the way down, then right, then all the way up again, then left again, then halfway down, and then it goes outside of the city center. Why? I don't know. That's the route. And when I asked the transit authorities in Derbent, like, how would a passenger who is waiting for the bus at this stop, indicated by the letter A, who wants to go to the stop indicated B, how would they know if they see that the bus number 5 is arriving, if they would go to the stop B or the stop C? And the answer is they ask the driver. So that's what we had to work with. So the reform started by bringing some sanity to at least some of the routes. They started with the routes 3, 4, 7, and 10, and we decided to display them in much thicker lines. They're the yellow one and the green one. Almost all of them run through this city center. Here are these routes isolated on the whole map. So we decided to make do with just 2 colors instead of using 4, because they were enough. There's too much happening here already. So we wanted to use as little colors as possible to still display what we want to display. And here, because all of these routes run through several stops in the city center, you can follow them even though they share a color. And then they branch only in the suburbs. Also, we used these New York-style discs for their numbers, which are not used for other routes, which are still insane. And as those routes improve, I hope we will also change their symbols to these discs. But these discs also follow their lines, and especially we repeat them where they branch so that you can be always sure that you follow the correct line. And this is what it looks like in context. So these lines are obviously thicker and more notable than the others. And we hope that soon more lines will share this sanity, and they will become thicker and there will be less of them. And there is one detail that I wanted to highlight. You may notice that these thick lines are so thick that you can run the thin red line just over the green one without making room for it. We didn't want to make a gap because we would have to continue the gap here, and we just run it like this, and we decided that it was good enough. It's readable and it's clean. Nobody will confuse anything here, so it's good. Sometimes you can do things like that and nobody will notice until you show them. let's move to Minsk, Belarus. So you may see that there are two lines that intersect in the center, and there is this geographical backing just for the 6 very central stations, and everything that's outside of this circle is just a schematic map. But what I want to talk about today is this station finder. So it's an alphabetical list of stations, and it helps you find the stations on the map. Usually you would use a coordinate grid for that, but I don't like coordinate grids, so I do everything I can to get rid of them. And here, what we are using is this special designation that shows you where the station is relative to the city center. So as you see a station name, you see the color of the line it's in, and you see to which part of the map you have to look to find the station. And if it is one of the stations that are in the center, they have the circle. For example, you want to find this station, which is called Grushauka, I guess. I'm not sure, I don't speak Belarusian. You know that it's somewhere in the bottom left, and here it is. This is something you can do if your system is well balanced around the center, when there's a very distinct center and it's not like it grows equally in all directions. So I would try this for Berlin, for example. This is Tashkent in Uzbekistan. This one we've released, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's the newest one. If you look here, you will see that I like to put geographical details on my map just to make them more informative, but this one, it has the full city geography. So you can see all the streets, there are all the smallest details of the river, there is everything that can be shown on this map. So if you look at this map, you may conclude that this is a geographical map. And of course, all the station exits are at the intersections that they have to be, or in other places in the city where they have to be. But it is not actually a geographical map. So if again you look from afar, you will see that the lines have somewhat geometrical shapes. They consist of straight segments. So how is that possible? And this is possible because we were cheating. So what we do is we warp the city in such a way that the metro lines become straight, and maybe the city geography is a little bit distorted. But we were lucky enough for the network be such that we could do that. And I even have a video. So basically, here's what's happening. What's interesting about this is that if you look at a particular neighborhood that you know, it itself is not that much distorted. The relative position of streets and parks and whatever you know is still about the same. So the city itself is quite recognizable. If you try to focus at a particular area, it's quite recognizable, but the map still looks pretty. And we also have this dark version because it's beautiful. It references some national patterns, and it would be too cheesy to put this on trains. But as a souvenir, as something you can buy and take home as a tourist, this is nice. So you see that all the streets are real, they connect at the angles that they have to connect, so they can really understand which streets these are. Okay, this is St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg is also the city where geography matters a lot, because it's cut into many, many islands by many, many rivers and canals, and you have to show all this. And it also has quite an unusual angle grid here. We have very nice transfer designations here. Today, I wanted to focus on pictograms. You can see several trains. There's the moon, and here's a coach. So here are all the pictograms that we use on this map. Usually, when you design pictograms for a map, you want to make them a family. So you want to make something that unifies them, so they are seen like they're designed by a single person, not just taken from internet where you found them on a random website. So usually you do this by maybe making them of the same proportions, maybe putting them into rectangles or circles, which is the worst way to do it. But these all look different. The buses, you look from the side, the rail track you look from above, the plane is a little bit tilted, the train is approaching you from a perspective. They are all different. They have different proportions. The bus is really long, the rail track is a little bit vertical. But what makes them a family, it's actually quite hard to tell. It's just the designer, Sergei Chikin, who designed them for this map, he used some similar mood for them, and that unifies them. But if you really try to find what's similar between them, you can find that these white lines are of the same thickness. They mean different things on different icons. These are the sections of the bus. This is a line between the rail and the train. This window in the airplane. And also you may notice that the windows in the airplane and on the buses are these cut-through windows, like sort of futuristic-looking windows, which are not like they are in reality. But this is also a detail that unifies them all. And finally, let's go to Moscow. So this is a commuter rail of Moscow region, the map that I've designed for them several years ago. Some of you must be familiar with the Moscow Metro, so you may see that Moscow Metro is there, and these lines are the commuter trains. So I'm using a trick here. The metro is shown in these light gray lines, and it's just the silhouette of the metro. I assume it's a little bit familiar to everyone who is traveling in Moscow because it's everywhere, so you at least have a vague understanding of what it looks like. But then, if I have space, I would put these thin lines with the color of the corresponding lines just to make it even more understandable what these lines are. But as soon as these lines approach something that has to do with the commuter rail, like a label or a station or whatever, I would interrupt it just to make this clearer what I'm trying to show with the commuter rail. So this works surprisingly well because these thin lines are enough to carry the color which you already know that it should be there. You don't use this color to plot some kind of route with the metro. It's just a reference system for you to understand like what part of the city this covers. This is, again, one of those tricks that I like to do to make sure that the maps that have a lot of information are still clean and beautiful, and they don't have too much stuff going on at the same time. And finally, the Moscow Metro. So Moscow Metro is developing very quickly. So we started designing the metro map in 2021, I guess, because we didn't like what's happening with the official map. It was getting uglier with every update of the system, and at some point it became really ugly, so I wanted to get back to... I was designing maps for Moscow since 2006, so at some point I stopped doing it because the official map became good enough, but then it deteriorated, so I had to get back to showing like what it should be. So we started in 2021, and we immediately understood that it would take at least a year, but probably more, because all of us were working on the spare time. Nobody paid us for that. We thought that by the time we finish it, it would be obsolete already. So we had to take into account all the plans of the Moscow Transit authorities of how to develop this system. And we found everything that we could find with the plans until the year 2030. And so we designed the map until 2030. And this is the one on the right. And for 2023, we just removed, or actually we made them very, very pale, the lines that were just going to open later. So here is what it's going to look like in 2030 if the plans work out the way they are on the table now. And when you design a map of such a large scale, it's easy to overlook some details. It's easy to forget about some tricky places in suburbs or whatever, but we wanted to make it perfect. We had no deadline. We just enjoyed ourselves doing it. So we took all the time we could to make it so that we love every single piece of this map. And now we do, and it's really beautiful. You may also notice how balanced it is in how the stations and lines are distributed, and it took a lot of effort to make it so, because as it was mentioned already today, sometimes it presents some challenge to distribute the stations in such a way that there are no obvious gaps on the map. And here's an even closer look. And that's all I have for today. So thank you. And this is again the code for the book, and there's my email and website. Thanks.
Thank you, Ilya.